This here is the YAMAHA SEQTRAK, and it's a battery-powered Groovebox with sampling capabilities. And it has 7 sample-based drum tracks, but you can load whatever samples you want onto them. And you also have Synth 1 and Synth 2, which are based on the AWM technology from Yamaha, so it's basically like multi-sampled synth sounds, pianos, all manner of sounds. And then you have one track, which is the DX track, which is a 4-operator FM synth, so it's a full synth. You can use the companion app that this comes with to edit it, and you also have the sampler track, which can play back basically 7 one-shot samples. And the SEQTRAK can sample, but it's not an advanced sampler. It's basically meant for shorter loops or one-shot samples. It can sample in stereo up to 16 seconds, and I think it's about a 500 megabyte memory that you can fill up with samples that you either import or record into it. In today's video, I want to focus on how you make music with the SEQTRAK as a standalone device. So I won't focus that heavily on the application that it comes with. The application gives you access to some deeper parameters, for example, for the effects, like the master compressor. But it's not something that you need to use to make music with it. It definitely works as a standalone device. I also won't go over the visualizer, as I'm not really familiar with visualizers and I felt like I couldn't do a good job with that. So I'm sure that others will cover it. And a big thank you to Yamaha for sponsoring today's in-depth tutorial. Let's start with a physical overview to get a sense of where everything's located. So over here we have buttons. We have the play button. We can mute tracks. We can start the sequence. And what we're listening to now is Synth 1 and Synth 2. There's also the FM synth and the sampler track. These are 1 track each, but the sampler is actually 7 samples. So you can play back 7 samples on 1 track. Over here we have volume control, we have delete, mute, solo, page that is used, for example, to change the bar, what you're viewing here on the step sequencer. And then we have the play button. So we can unmute the drums. And we have 7 sample-based drum tracks. You can load your own samples onto them, but you can also load samples onto Synth 1, Synth 2, and your own samples. You can either sample them directly using the audio input here, the built-in microphone, or just load them, or sample the USB as well. You can also load them through the app that this synth comes with. And then we have the FM sound, and if I press all, I think here, and key, yeah, then I get the keyboard. And the FM voice here is an actual synth that you can program. You have some hands-on control on the unit for parameters. And if you use the app that the Seqtrak comes with, you get a ton of more parameters that you can tweak. And the Seqtrak is divided into 3 clear parts. So we have this part here with the drum sounds and the step sequencer. So we have the kick here, and just put down steps like this. And then we have the synth and sampler part, where this is a keyboard. But we can also turn on keyboard mode, like this. And we also have the samples, so 7 triggers for samples. And if you want a step sequencer for the synth part, hit page and the synth. So now this view here is for programming steps for the synth. And the third part is the control for the sounds and effects. So using this button here, we change whatever these 4 buttons are doing. So with this knob, I can change the sample that we're playing back. And with this knob, changing the pitch, you can change the panning and the level. Now, if I press this button here again, we move to the second page. Here we have attack, decay, we have filter control and resonance. And next one, we have reverb send, delay send, and we have other, which is for the drum sounds here. We have a low EQ and a high EQ, and I do think it's the same for the synth sound. And if you're on a synth track, you can also enable an arpeggiator. I'll show you more about that later. So in terms of effects here, we have single effects. So there are insert effects for each track. So one for the sample track, one for each synth track, and one for each drum track. Now, what you can also do is you can have a master effect. So for example, on this one, I've selected the ducker and I've just added a bit. So if I play you the sound here, we can basically sidechain the sound a lot. And I like just a bit. But we can also go from master to single. And now we can add an insert effect to each track. So here's some distortion. We use this knob here to change. And you can see the little light here. These are different types of distortions, for example. We can go for modulation effects. So you can see we have reverb, delay, compressor, distortion, modulation like chorus and flanger type stuff, ducker, which I think is some sort of side chaining, and then we have these 2 sliders here, which are set to high pass and a repeater. Now the effect for these 2 touch strips here is assignable, so you don't have to have a high pass and a repeater. You can have some other effect here for each of the touch strips. Something that a lot of you were wondering about was also how can you hook up the Seqtrak to external gear. And since you have the little MIDI adapter with MIDI in and out, you can hook up a MIDI keyboard to play the Seqtrak. It's super simple, and you can send MIDI to external gear, and it can sound something like this. And if you want to record something, you just connect your MIDI keyboard. So we select MIDI channel number 8. It's the bass, number 9. And then we have, it's this one, and then we have the DX1. A hidden bonus if you're using a MIDI keyboard is that you can play the drum tracks chromatically. So I haven't found any way to bring up a keyboard or a chromatic view for the drum tracks on the actual device, like you have for the synths. But with the MIDI keyboard, I can play samples on the drum tracks chromatically. So this basically means that you could be loading melodic samples for the drum tracks as well using the companion app. If you want to do it on the device, you have to use the tuning, the pitch knob here to set the individual pitch of the notes. So back to the MIDI keyboard, we're going to record a little lead sound, and a nifty thing here is if we go to a synth track, press page and the synth track, we can now see the progression of the beat. Wait, like this. We can see here. That's any good, but it's very easy to delete or just move over to a different pattern. And this is something I like. It's actually quite fast used with a MIDI keyboard. We can just hit record here and you can see we're already on to the next one. And over here we have the project button. Hit it, these ones light up. So you have 8 projects. This is the first thing that I want to mention as a potential future firmware update. I really want more than 8 projects. We have 16 keys here, so 16 projects would be great. 8 is just too little. And then we have swing controls. We can just hold down the button here and you can see it's increasing or decreasing or going back here to the middle. And then we have BPM, plus and minus, and then we have the MIDI. And the MIDI uses one of these adapters. You get both MIDI in and out, and it's very easy to hook up a keyboard to the Seqtrak. Now, something I did think about when using the Seqtrak with MIDI is that there's no dedicated MIDI tracks. I think that if you, for example, set it up so you can hold project here and push one of these knobs here for the synths or samplers and it turning to a dedicated MIDI track, that would be really nice. Having additional MIDI tracks makes a lot of sense on any Groovebox. And then over here we have the audio input, which you can use for sampling stuff, and then we have the output as well as USB. And connecting the Seqtrak to a computer, it works both as an audio interface as well as a MIDI interface. So that's one way you can use it. Another important thing to know before we make some music with it is that these knobs here are used to select the different tracks, and if I turn the knob, we're changing between different patterns. By default there are 3 patterns per track, but we can also hold down the little knob here, and then you can see that we can have up to 6 patterns. We just have to enable them, so we can have 6 patterns per track. And now you see they change color, the little LEDs here, so now I can move between the first 3 and the second 3. Now, here's another thing I'd like to see in a future firmware update: more patterns. Either all 16, or if you want to do by 3, it could be at least up to 12. So that's something for Yamaha to consider for future firmware updates. More patterns, because more patterns is fun. So we're going to select an empty project, and then we're going to select a kick. Like this one. Down a few steps. And here we have a few options. So we can, for example, hold down a step and we can add sub-steps. We can also hold down the step and press mute to change the probability of the step. So you can see here it decreases. So this decreases the probability of this step playing. We can add a second step here, and we can turn down the probability by holding down the step and pressing mute. And we can also hold down page and turn the knob here, and we can change the pattern length. So you can see here we can go from one step here up to, I don't really know how much this is, but it's a ton of bars. You can do really long patterns. And now we can find a snare sound that we like. Like this. We can set the probability. We can go to the hi-hat track. Put down a few steps. And here we could actually try and do 15 steps instead of 16. So just hold down page, turn the knob here to change the pattern length. And on the little hi-hat here, we can actually program, for example, different pitches if you want to, per step. So there's parameter locking per step for most of the parameters. So we can just hold down a step here, and we can use the second button here, or knob here, to change the pitch. And we can change the panning as well. And the level. We have an open hi-hat. We could just change the level per step. And we have a shaker. And just to show you here, I'm just putting down all the steps here. We can do motion recording. So you just hold down the record button. This is the record button here. And if we want to, we can just go page for the kick, and we can add more steps. So we hold down page, turn the knob. So now we have 2 bars, and we use the page button here to cycle between the 2 bars. So we can put down some more steps. I'm not sure I'm feeling the kick, so let's try a different sound. And if we take a look here at the application, you can see that there's plenty of kick sounds to choose from. So there's something about this sound that I like, but I want to add an effect on it. So we're on single here for effects, and then we can just select whatever effect we want. For example, distortion. I don't know, giving it a bit more crunch. Kind of nice. So we select the different tracks here using these knobs here. We can switch patterns by just turning the knob. So if we want a second kick pattern, we can do something like this. We can lock different parameters per step. So basically anything that's selectable using, or tweakable using these knobs here, can be parameter locked. So we could do a pitch up here on these steps here for the second kick pattern. So we could go don't know why you want that pitched up kick, but it's just an example. And like I showed you, if you hold down page, turn this knob here, you're setting different pattern lengths. And if we make a little pattern and we're not happy, we can just hit delete and delete it. Oh, and also a very nifty feature is that you hold down the sound button and now we get categories. So the last one here is favorites. This lets you access the samples that you loaded or favorited, or samples or sounds that you've saved on the device as well. If you made changes to them, you want to save them as a favorite, you can. So if you hit any of these buttons, you get different categories of sounds. So for example, here we have congas, I think. And here's djembe. Open hats, kicks, and there's of course also copying. So if I hold this down, you'll see a blinking thing going off here, and then I can just hit page and press like this. And you can not only copy and paste steps, you can copy and paste the patterns as well. So you can copy between the different tracks here in the same group, so between drum tracks and between synth tracks, but not between synth tracks and drum tracks, because they are inherently different. For example, the synth tracks are polyphonic, whereas the drum tracks are not. So what you do to copy is you hold down the pattern here. This brings up the pattern view, so you can see the 6 patterns. Then you just hold down the pattern that you want to copy, like so. And then we press page and the pattern that we want to copy to. Another thing that I think works pretty well with this sequencer is micro timing. So you just put down 2 steps here, and now I can just hold down the steps and I turn the snare, and you can see micro timing lighting up over here. So be mindful what lights up. So now we can change the timing of the snare here if we want to. We want a little bit more sloppy, and we can do it with the kick as well. We can just change the timing ever so slightly. If you want to, you can also play the drum sounds using these keys over here. Hold down a track like this, press the keyboard. So now I can play them. There's also an undo and redo button here, but it's only 1 level deep, so you can't like undo a ton of changes you've made. It's just for the last thing you did. Before we look at the synths, here's a small thing you can do. You can hold down project, and now we can make a temporary save of the project. So the save is over here. Now, this is something you can't change while the track is playing. So you see there, it stops. So it's not like a temporary save on an Electron Digitact, for example. It's just a temporary save of whatever you're working on, so that you can revert back to it if you need to. So it's something that can be useful in certain situations when you want to test something out, but it's not for a live situation. Now say we have put down a ton of steps like this here, just willy-nilly, and we have also recorded a bunch of changes to the pitch, and we don't like this. Well, what do we do? Well, this is one thing I really like. Just hold delete and hold the button. Or rather, push the knob down. So you hold the delete button and whatever knob corresponding to the setting that you want to erase the automation for. You can also do this operation per step. So we hold down a step like this. We change the pitch here because it's the easiest one. It turns purplish, and then we can hold delete. Or rather, we can hold, delete the step and like this. Now we've removed the pitch automation for that particular step. It's a little bit more of a clunky way, I guess. You have to hold multiple things pressing a knob, but it works. Now, if we have this little cowbell here, we're pitching it down. We're liking this. We're changing the filter a bit, and we might want to add also an effect. So we're changing here to distortion maybe. And say we like this sound, we can now favorite it. So we hold the Alt button and press the Sound button. Now it's saved as a favorite. So we can access favorites. So if I change the sound to something else, I can access favorites here. So here's some of my kicks. So let's see here if we can find it. There we go. And this is divided between drum section and the synth parts, so you can't access synth favorites for the drum parts and vice versa. And this is actually a little bit of a problem and something that could be changed in future firmware, because sometimes when you sample something into the sampler, for example, or you load a sample into a drum track, some custom sample, you might want it accessible by the synth tracks, because the synth tracks are the only tracks that can play back a sample chromatically. So that's something for Yamaha to consider, opening this up a bit more so you can select samples between, or favorites between the different track types. Now let's move over to the synth tracks, synth 1, 2 and FM synthesizer. Now these are your polyphonic synth sounds. So synth 1 and synth 2 I think have about 128 polyphony. They are sample-based synth sounds. And then we have the DX track, which is an FM synth with 8 voices. Now for synth number 1 here, we can first enable by pressing Alt and key, the keyboard. And we can go here to sound select. So we have a bunch of different bass sounds here. That's the first category. And we can just select between different categories by holding down sound, pressing buttons here. So we can get... And I'm going to use this knob here. So we're on the first page here. Use this button to change pages. First page, and then we're changing to either mono, poly, or chord. So here we have pre-programmed chord in the scale, and based on the key that we've selected. So you can select different scales. So if I press scale here, we have different scales available to us. And there's also octave control. So you can see here we have the different octaves here. So I like this one here. And we can of course add some reverb. And possibly a bit delay as well. And now we increase the bar, or the length of the pattern, by just hitting bar here. So we get 4 bars. A good thing to know, however, and something that I'd like to see added in future firmwares, is the ability to do probabilities for the synth tracks and also substeps. So you can parameter lock the parameters, but you can't do probability or substeps for the synth parts. And I don't know if there's an actual count-in for the sequencer. I would have loved one. Oh, and a quick thing about the kick. If we want it to be a little bit more punchy, we can just go here to the third page. We can turn up the bass, increasing the bass frequency. And in the app, you can actually set what frequency you are changing. So now I want to add a master effect, and I use this knob here to select between the different ones. So we can do modulation effects, or I don't know, crazy panner, but I just want to do a ducker because I actually quite like this one. And a good thing to note is that if we hold down bar here and we turn the knob here for one of the tracks here, for the synth and sampler part, we get the step length for that as well. So that's one way to change it. And you can also turn on and off quantization by holding down Alt and pressing the rec button here, leaving it on or off. And now we'll jump over to the DX or FM synth. And as usual, we have multiple different sounds. From crazy to sweet. Now if we take a look here at the app, we can actually see that there is a lot of parameters here available. We have algorithms that you can choose from, different FM algorithms. We can also go in and do changes to the different operators. So this is a 4-operator synth. So what's accessible here on the actual device? Well, if we go here to the 5th page, we can change the algorithm here. We can also change the mod amount, the frequency ratio, and the feedback level. And these can all be parameter locked for some quite interesting results. So now I've recorded a little ARP. We're gonna record some filter automation, and we're also gonna change the decay. And we're gonna go into the 5th page and record some changes here to the feedback, for example, and some small changes to the mod and the frequency ratio. And also some insert effects automation. Now let's go here and just turn up the reverb, send a bit. Something that you can also enable here on the device is the arpeggiator. So basically we can set what kind of arpeggiator we want. We can set the gate length. And we can also set the speed. And all of this is also available on the application, and there are more settings. Next up, I want to show you how to sample on the Seqtrak. And the Seqtrak can sample up to 16 seconds per sample. And I think you have about a 500 megabyte memory that you can fill up with your own samples, either sampled or loaded using the app, for example. You can sample in stereo, you can use the built-in microphone, the line input, or the USB input here for USB audio. And you can also resample, meaning that you can sample the internal sound of the Seqtrak. But something important I want to get across is that there are no advanced sampling capabilities. You can only change the start point of a sample, end point, attack and decay. That's about it in terms of sampling editing. Samples are automatically normalized, but there's no truncate setting, for example. You can't loop a sample. So there's actually quite a few features that I think that Yamaha could add with future firmware updates to the sampling. Now let's get into it. So we have the sampler track here, and I've hooked up my Hydra Synth here, and all you need to do is select one of these slots here and press record sample, and I've enabled a count-in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And it starts recording and it stops recording after 16 seconds, or when I press the rec sample button, and then it saves. Let's move to another slot. I hit record.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, if you want to change the source, so currently we're sampling from the audio input, you can just hold down rec like this. And now you have options here. So we're on the line input, and then I think it's USB, and then it's resampling. And to enable or disable the count-in, you just hold all and press rec to turn it on or turn it off. And if we want to change the start and end point of the sample, just go to the 4th page. We have start, end, attack and decay. I'm selecting a new sample slot here, and I am holding down resample or sampling button, and I'm pressing the resampling. And now I can press record, and I can use the effects level here to add some tremolo to this pad. So now I changed to a new pattern. I have put down a step here for the resampled pad, and I'm holding down this button here and I'm changing the length so we get 4 bars It's playing for 4 bars, and now we can just go and change the master effect again to something else. So now we're going to resample the pad with some distortion. So we have the new sample here. And I managed to use the resampled pad for a little beat. So sampling a Seqtrak is fast, it's quite intuitive to use, but it's also not that deep. So something that should be working in the future is loading a sample using the app onto the Synth 1 and Synth 2 tracks, playing back polyphonically, chromatically, and yeah, playing chords with whatever samples you want on those tracks. At least that's what I'm hearing from Yamaha should be coming in future firmware updates. The one thing that the Seqtrak actually does really well is song mode. So you hold down All here and press Project. And now we can cycle through 3 different modes here. So one mode is just your normal one where you can program the device, the step sequencer, you can record stuff. Hold down All, press again, and now we are in song mode. And here we have different scenes. So 16 scenes. And they are played in song mode sequentially. If I press the first scene, I can select whatever patterns I want. It also saves mute states, so I could have tracks muted for the first scene. And then for the second scene, I could just select whatever patterns I want. So it sounds like this. And now if I just play it from the start, it will just progress through the little beat here. But you can also hit scene number 1, for example, hold down Page and turn the All knob. And now we are changing the number of steps that we want scene number 1 to be. So let's say the patterns are 32 steps, but you want it to run for longer or shorter, that's possible. Or just turn it down all the way. Like this, when it's this teal color, then it means that it's automatically, so it basically goes on for as long as the longest pattern in, yeah, that's in the scene. But what I like even more than this song mode here is that we can press All and Project once more. Now we are in the scene mode. So in scene mode, we can actually jump between the different scenes. It doesn't play back linearly. So now if I play a scene, I can just jump to another scene automatically and jump back. And by holding down the Project button and turning the Alt knob, we can change the quantization here. So it's basically the time between you pressing a new scene and it actually changing to it. Making for smoother transitions, for example. And to show you this a little bit better, I have a different project where I'm gonna juggle a few things. I think that many Grooveboxes struggles when it comes to creating an arrangement, and this is a strength of the Seqtrak. It's actually quite easy to create an arrangement or even an entire song structure using this song or scenes mode. Now, one Problem though is that there's no way to like export this song that you've made. You have to record it either using the USB audio or the line out. There's no way to get stems out of it currently. And a future firmware update that I'd love to see, but I'm not sure if it's even technically possible, is to be able to export stems somehow, either like an offline export functionality or some way of just doing it over the USB multi-tracking somehow, but I'm not even sure if it's remotely technically possible. So that's my tutorial for the Yamaha Seqtrak. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thank you for watching. Thank you Yamaha for sponsoring this video here, and let me know what you think about the Seqtrak. Let me know if there are other questions, follow-up videos you want me to make. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.